everybody. Happy Labor Day. I am Alexis Ward and welcome to 12 Faces Psychology. So I decided to try to squeak in a quick video here, and today's video will be about polarity. This is actually a video I've been wanting to do for a long time because we are in such polarizing circumstances on the planet right now. And you can really see just the way that the energy is pulling and stretching out. Viewpoints have become so rabidly opposed to one another that we've kind of lost sight of the common thread that runs through each of us. And we've kind of lost sight of whether we are contributing to harmony on the planet or distortion on the planet. So I wanted to do this video to hopefully assist in creating greater harmony and working with the current polarity that exists on the planet at this moment in time to try to understand ourselves, our shadow, the aspects of ourselves that have been judged, our own mental framework, so that hopefully we can utilize this extremely drastic energy that is just like creating these extremes and creating this dualistic framework in which it seems like it's either this or it's that. There's a right, there's a wrong, there's a black, there's a white, there's a this, there's a that. And we can try to use that energy to be like, actually, there's a whole spread of gray in between where black and white dance together. And I don't at all mean that in terms of race. I mean that black as a color, white as a color, so that these things can come together and dance in the way that they're meant to, and not just be pulled out into this extreme where you have to choose between one and the other, and the one prevents the other from being correct and almost denies its very existence. All right, so let's get into it here. All right, so the first of my 4 tips, and the first 3 are just kind of like basic, like working with your own psyche, looking at what polarity brings up for you, looking at the other opposing viewpoint and how that triggers you. And then the 4th is really where I kind of want to get into the meat of it. So if you can make it to the 4th in this, I think that's where this really comes together in terms of what I'm trying to say. All right, so number 1 is balance your perspective. And if you haven't seen my critical thinking video or any of the cognitive distortion videos that I've created, you might want to go back and look at that for a more in-depth discussion of how to think critically and how to balance your thought out and how to kind of look at the other side of an argument to come to a more objective understanding of any subject. But for the purpose of today's video, I'm talking about balancing your perspective in terms of being humble enough, being wise enough, being open enough to not get locked the fuck up into your own viewpoint where you cannot even acknowledge the other side of what you're feeling, where you cannot even go and hear with an open heart what people on the opposite side of the experience spectrum are coming to, where they're coming from, what their understanding is. So the reason that I say to do this is because, which brings us to number 2, which is speak to values. So if you are really dug into a perspective, you want to balance that perspective out. You want to be able to go and listen to the other side's perspective. You want to hear that out. You want to listen for, as number 2 is, the core values and what is being expressed. Because most people have the same desires for their life. They love their family. They want to have fun. They want to have a sense of purpose. They want to have enough physical comfort that they're not strained on a day-to-day basis. They want freedom of their time. They want resources. They want to commune with other people. So if you can kind of step out of looking at how we might create that, because then we get into this very divisive layer of consciousness, right? Where we're talking politics, where we're trying to figure things out from the limited set of options that we are currently having available. Because the idea of there being this party's way or that party's way, we have to do it like this, we have to do it like that. You cannot solve a problem from the same layer of consciousness in which the problem was created. And so you really have to kind of expand outside of that set of thinking, which is exactly what polarity is about, right? It's about limited thinking. It's about this or that. It's binary, it's dualistic, it's polarized. So this is really about getting outside of the notion that this is the way to do things and this is correct and this is the incorrect way to do things. So really trying to speak to values when you're interfacing with somebody who has completely different perspective on how things are going on in the world, really try to say, okay, well, ultimately, what do you want for your life? Ultimately, what do you care about? What are your priorities? What are your values? I bet you that you are going to have the same values as that other human being. Almost never are you going to have, unless you're like talking to an extremely honest sociopath, are you going to hear somebody be like, well, I want terrible things for everybody else and I just want good things for me. And like that's not how people are. That's not how people think. So really try to connect with people at the level of their values, not how those values are going to get implemented, not how specifically they think the world should change, who they think the nefarious leaders are in the world and who are the good guys. I mean, this is where you get real confused, right? All right, so number 3 is examine what triggers you. And this is where we can do kind of some shadow work. Basically just going into, why am I getting so triggered by this particular thing? Why is this perspective so aggravating to me? And I think that can be like a real well of information for anybody of, okay, well, my tendency is to go towards freedom thinking. But there's a lot of people that are like, well, if you're drawn towards having freedom, then you don't give a shit about anybody else. How do we meld this idea of personal liberty with communal compassion? How do we put those things together? Well, the very idea that those things cannot exist in harmony is completely ridiculous, right? In fact, those things are harmonic. Those things must exist together for there to be true harmonic resonance. So really try to get outside of this notion that it's this or it's that and come to the place where you see that those things can all exist together. All right, so number 4, and this is where we really get into it, is level up to unity consciousness. Like I was saying before about you cannot solve a problem in the same layer of consciousness in which that problem was created. This is requiring us to step above the 3rd dimensional understanding of how things work in the world. If you are jumping on either political party train, if you are jumping behind this movement or that movement, and I'm not telling you not to do it because, hey, whatever puts passion and fire in your heart right now, you're being called to for a reason. So play that out for yourself, understand that. But at the same time, you can also examine those things for yourself. You can also take a look at, why am I so passionate about this? What gets me so fired up about this particular topic or movement that's going on in the world right now? So really examine those things within yourself as far as like working on your own psyche and consciousness. But in terms of recognizing what's going on in the world, be willing to level up beyond this 3rd dimensional understanding, because 3D, that's where polarity exists. That's where the concept of it must be this or it must be that is coming from, right? It's coming from a system of it either is or it isn't. It's black or it's white. It's Republican or it's Democrat. It's selfish or it's unity consciousness. It's like these things are a false dichotomy. It's not one or the other. It's always both and. And these things can happen in unity, in conjunction with each other. So instead of getting into like an anti-Trump or a pro-Trump debate, step back and say, hey, but what are the things you really want to see happen in the world? And you will find that pretty much everyone relates to those same type of values. And that's where we can start to come together as people, as a planet, as a human race. Anytime that you are getting pulled into one type of thinking, in a way that makes you believe that it is right and all else is wrong and this is what we must do, you better check yourself, because you're taking the bait right there. You're taking the bait of divisiveness, and there's a lot of division being very intentionally done right now. If we come together as a planet, there's no stopping what can happen for humanity. There will be no more debt enslavement. There will be no more hate. There will be no more war if we really come together. But there are a lot of influences on the planet that would like to see those things continue, those that are benefiting from it, right? So really put your focus on leveling up to the level of unity consciousness, because that's where we can create lasting change. And that's where we can come together, no matter what our political views are, no matter what our ideas about how it should be done. We all really want the same thing in our hearts. Focus on that. Focus on transcending the duality, because it doesn't really exist. It's an illusion. And you will be able to use this time of intense polarity for intense benefit. All right, I hope this video has helped today, and I will see you in my next video. Bye-bye.